Hello, everybody. Welcome to Narrative Live with our special series, 5 Nights, 5 Secrets about Jeffrey Epstein. We're very lucky to have Kait Justice here tonight. Kait, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you on. You've been having good success recently with your coverage of Jared Kushner. And I'm dying to answer the question that people have often asked me: who is the successor of Jeffrey Epstein? And the name that sometimes comes up is Jared Kushner. Is he the new Jeffrey Epstein? And that doesn't necessarily mean in the human
All the
trafficking
ways.
department, but it could be in that all the ways, yes. But it's probably just in his relationship with certain world leaders and his financing through certain world leaders. So that is an interesting question. It's a lingering question, and it's a hell of a tease for everyone who's joining us tonight. Before we get into it, Kait, if I could just update everyone on what's going on with the Iran situation, because earlier
Yes,
on
please.
today, things were really escalating as people were suspecting. There would be some sort of peace talks, and those fell apart. Then after those fell apart, there was an expectation that war would resume. Now, that is not the case as we look at things now, because the President Donald Trump has told everybody on Truth Social, which is where he does the stuff. Sorry, where are you? Here you go. Where he does the stuff, has said this, that based on the fact that the government of Iran is seriously fractured, not really the reason, that's my interpretation, not unexpectedly so, and upon the request of Field Marshal Asim Munir and Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif of Pakistan, we've been asked to hold our attack on the country of Iran until such time as their leaders and representatives can come up with a unified proposal. I've therefore directed the military to continue to the blockade. In other respects, I remain ready and able and will therefore extend the ceasefire until such time as their proposal is submitted. Now, this is what one would call a lie, or at least a fabrication, because what's really going on is, it's emerged that Iran has been able to rearm itself. Many people suspect it's rearmed some of its air defenses. I can't get confirmation on that, but I can get confirmation on the fact that there are certain chemical supplies that have arrived in Iran, probably from China, in order to resupply some of their missile supply. And as we look here, sorry to turn it out, but these are images now of what it looked like when the U.S. Intercepted the Iranian vessel the other day that carried some of these supplies. Once they were on board, they were able to determine that many of these supplies that could have been dual used for either commercial use or military use were on board. And that is what Donald Trump was referring to this morning when he was on CNBC. He made a really unusual statement that caught everyone by surprise, saying that he thought that China had given Iran some things. Let's just watch some more of this video, because it is kind of gripping video to watch the U.S. troops, board this vessel and then ultimately seize it. This is an Iranian vessel. It's gotten the Iranians very upset. Of course, they're upset with the blockade of the Iranian ports, and they are threatening to attack American vessels at any minute. Now, if Donald Trump continues the ceasefire, if he doesn't prompt an attack first, it's likely there won't be a response from Iran. But if, indeed Donald Trump does do something and starts firing or defending his positions against the Iranians, then we could look at a very serious situation, because there are two Air Force carriers inside, vessels, I shouldn't say carriers, two naval carriers inside the naval vessels. I should just be completely accurate there. The USS Frank E. Peterson and the USS Michael Murphy. These are Navy-guided missile destroyers that are inside the straits, and they're busy cleaning up the straits of mines. Now, that puts them in what military experts call a kill box, because really they are sitting ducks at that point for any attacks that could come from Iran, all the way up through to the top of the Gulf there, of the top of the Straits of Hormuz, and all those little islands along the way, which we know that the Americans have wanted to take. That situation is very concerning for people who are watching the military positioning tonight, because, of course, it could be a real bloodbath. It could hurt many Americans on the seas in these vessels if there's an attack by Iran. So let's play you that clip now from Donald Trump from earlier on, CNBC Squawk Box, when he was on talking about what he said were Chinese gifts or something like that given to the Iranians.
4 or 5 weeks ago, So we've used this to restock, and they probably have done a little bit of restocking. We caught a ship yesterday that had some things on it which wasn't very nice. A gift from China, perhaps. I don't know. But I was a little surprised, but because I have a very good relationship, and I thought I had an understanding with President Xi, but that's all right. That's the way war goes, right? But I will tell you that we have, our military is incredible.
So, that's the way war goes. He is, in fact, signaling that conversation we know he had with Xi was about rearming the Iranians with missile defense vehicles, or manning pads is what they're called. They're sort of these shoulder missile defense weapons that are very, very powerful and effective. So if those haven't been given to the Iranians, that means the Chinese have stuck to their word. But it does seem like there's resupplying with some other things that is making the Americans concerned that if they call off the ceasefire tonight, they'd be leaving 2 U.S.-guided missile destroyers in the Straits of Hormuz as sitting ducks, basically, for Iranian attacks, should they want to continue their assault on Iran. So just wanted to update everyone on the latest there. It is an interesting situation. It's a breaking news situation, and everyone should be watching it. There is many alerts this evening from various countries asking their citizens to leave the Middle East, concerned that the whole thing is a bit of a powder keg right now and could be inflamed at any minute. And to that, let's move on to 5 Nights, 5 Secrets with Kait Justice here. Kait, it's an interesting intersection that we're having with breaking news tonight involving the Middle East and the person that you've been covering, which is Jared Kushner, because Jared Kushner is the peace envoy to the Middle East. He's the guy who's negotiating the Middle East. And as you've been reporting and others have been reporting, he is extremely conflicted. I mean, to say, that's even an understatement. He is very severely, whatever the largest term you can think of, conflicted with his investments and various sponsors from Middle Eastern countries like Saudi Arabia. Tell us what your article on your Substack, which is called Downwind the Truth, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Downwind of Truth, yeah.
The Downwind of Truth. And everyone should subscribe to Kait's Substack and explain to us what you've been finding out about Jared Kushner and the Saudis.
So I think one of the benefits that I have kind of looking at all of this is that I am not an expert. Like you are very well versed in all of this. And so for me, I'm kind of just coming into this with one question that I always go back to, and it's like, but why? That's usually my question, right?
Good question.
And usually it always has been coming back to Jared Kushner. And what I recently learned, I had written about Scott Bessent and his dealings with Kushner, and they are currently in the process of, Scott Bessent and our government is supposed to be overseeing this purchase of EA Sports by the Saudis, and Jared Kushner's, I believe it's his affinity group, is in for 5%, I believe, of this deal. And then I think he's getting some other fees kind of as like a consulting thing.
What's it called? UA Sports?
EA Sports.
EA Sports. And what does EA Sports do?
So that's a whole thing why that's very scary. But EA Sports is actually one of like the largest gaming platforms probably in the world. And they have data on over 500 million people. And one thing that made me in particular, very concerned about the sale of this to anybody, let alone a foreign country, is the fact that this data that they have been gathering at EA Sports is a lot of data around gamers and about your personality and your response times to things and how you react under stress, and just all of these data points that you wouldn't think is being collected is definitely being collected. And so there's all of this data, plus I'm sure it's a valuable company. And so the Saudis are hoping to purchase this. So I started looking into a lot of this, and Kushner.
What led you to that, by the way? Why EA Sports? What led you to you're talking about Electronic Arts, really. This is the company. Okay, it's a really, really big gaming company, previously owned by CBS, maybe, I think, or the same group that owns CBS. But yeah, this is a big gaming company. But what made you start there? What tweaked your interest?
I think that I was looking into Scott Bessent, I think is what I was looking into. And then I started learning about that particular deal that was, currently something that was very controversial, because a lot of experts who analyze these kinds of things have said that Kushner's involved in this strictly because who's going to say no to the son-in-law of the president, in this particular cabinet anyway. Right. And so that, I think, is really why he's involved in this, and it's to make sure that this happens. Now, where it starts to get a little bit, to your point, conflicting, is that the Saudis had given Kushner $2 billion, I believe, towards his Affinity Partners fund. And that particular amount, I think, is, and again, I'm not fully versed on how all of this works, so this is very like generic layman's version of all of this. But I think it's in August. The Saudis have an opportunity to take that money back. So I think it is like, is this a good investment? Should we continue, kind of thing? And they have the option to take this money back. So Kushner definitely had incentive to make sure that the Saudis are happy. So I started, just learning about that relationship a little bit. And I had started to I think I had found an email, and it was Epstein basically laying out a whole plan for the Saudi royal court on how to essentially remove themselves from the Western banking system. He kept telling them, the regulations essentially in the Western banking system are holding them back. And he had proposed to them an oil-backed currency. So he was trying to essentially get them to start their own currency backed by their oil. And he even went as far as to pitch a cryptocurrency that was compliant with that new currency. And in one of these email communications, he had actually said that he had, I can't remember exactly how he worded it, but he had said that he had been talking to the founders or the creators of Bitcoin who were very excited about the idea. And so, I mean, I don't know that these were this was the actual creator, but that's what the email said. So
it's so interesting because he has a big history with crypto, of course.
Yes.
Some people suggest he may have been involved in the invention of crypto. I don't believe that, but as early on, he was involved with various communication with various countries about crypto and about doing exactly what you're describing there. In fact, I think he pitched a very similar idea to the Russians about, finding a new banking system that would be modernized, that would be disconnected from the old traditional banking system that basically came out of Europe. The old banking system came out of Austria and Germany and hadn't really evolved very much in England and hadn't really evolved in many hundred years. So his pitch to a lot of these countries who are sort of, behind sanctions or finding it difficult to get out from behind sanctions was this crypto opportunity to try and find a new modern system. So it's not surprising to hear him pitch them. And it's not surprising to see that he's connected to the crypto world because one of his key advisors is a major inventor of crypto. I can't remember the name, it escapes me right now, but nevertheless, this is a fertile ground for Jeffrey Epstein. But were the Saudis receptive to this idea?
I don't know. So I was just looking for that email in my article, but yeah, I've spoken to some of the founders of Bitcoin who are very excited. And I don't know where this ever evolved to, but that's the name I was looking for. It's called Blockstream. There is a person named, I think it was Adam Back, and he is the founder of Blockstream. He's also one of the people, because, there's like this short list of people, what's his name? Satoshi
Yes.
Yeah,
that
I
guy.
can't remember. But
It may be Elon Musk, some people suspect, but I don't know if it is either.
I wouldn't give him that much
Yeah.
credit. But
Yeah.
I think this Adam Back is one of the people that's on this short list of people that they think maybe is the actual creator of Bitcoin. And so anyway, Epstein had proposed, all of these things. And in my research, what really struck me about all of this is how similar all of this started to sound with what, Jared Kushner was doing with his affinity partners. And the affinity partners was, like I said, there was the $2 billion investment. But what was really especially, I don't want to say interesting, but suspicious about that is that the Saudi Crown Prince, MBS, was specifically told not to invest that money, that Jared's investment group was not a good, recommended place for their money. And he personally said, I'm doing it anyway. And
yeah, this came at the end of the Trump administration when,
yes.
Kushner was sort of doing the rounds, taking his victory rounds, if you will, and taking money along the way. And the Saudis ponied up with $2 billion courtesy of their sovereign fund there. And the sovereign fund board was the ones who said to MBS, no, don't do this. Kushner's not experienced enough to be handling this kind of money. He doesn't have the track record. But nevertheless, it was overridden by MBS, as you rightly say there. And that's how Affinity Partners became funded to the tune of $2 billion. Now, it's not the first time that Jared Kushner has been, sponsored or believed to be under the influence of Jared Kushner. Though years ago, I remember MBS gloated. He said, I've got Jared Kushner in my pocket because he, basically had him in his pocket. So it's not like it was new, but, it's interesting that MBS, who is now the Crown Prince, really pushed through this Affinity Partners $2 billion investment.
Yeah, and then the other interesting thing that again made me think Kushner. So one thing that Kushner had kind of really taken credit for was something called the Abraham Accords, and it's really meant to be both a peace agreement, but also one that helps to recognize Israel as its own, sovereign recognized nation, and to help normalize relations with Israel in the Middle East. And that's kind of what it was positioned as. But one thing that I had written about in my article was that I had found an email that Epstein had written to one of the leaders of Qatar. And this was so Jared Kushner, I should have probably started here. A lot of this all goes back to a property that is notoriously, I think, noted as the worst real estate deal in New York real estate history. I'm not even exaggerating. That's what it's
666,
called.
right?
Yes.
That's the number of the building. It's so
literally
famous.
Yeah, so the building is literally 666 Fifth Avenue. I mean, you can't make this up. And he had gotten in a bad deal in way over his head. And there's a lot that is involved there. And what I had learned, so again, every time I write something like this, I have to very much go back through and try to understand what this even means, right? Because I'm not from this world. So I'm like, how do people make money on debt? How does that, how do you do that? So just understanding some of those basic things at a very top level, very top level. So I learned that, one of the ways is, so people will purchase debt, at a discounted rate. So maybe someone owes $1 million, but you pay $500,000 for this debt with the hope that you're going to get that additional money. So that's your profit. And so essentially, there was all of this stuff that people had done, jumped through hoops, and Jared Kushner still had, money that he needed to come up with for this property. And one of the places he had gone to was Qatar and their sovereign wealth fund. And from what I understand, it was going to happen. And then something had fallen through with this. And this was during Trump's first presidency. And right after that happened is when they had gone ahead with the blockade against Qatar. And so Epstein had written an email to one of the Qatari leaders. And in it, he said, if the people would allow
who's
your
an
country...
email too? I want to see if I can pull it up here.
I don't know how to pronounce his name. Jabor, Jabor, I don't want to butcher it. And it's down kind of towards the bottom of my article, the Qatar pillar, it's called. And there is a quote, and it says, if the people would allow your country to recognize Israel, could be interesting to discuss. And so it made me think, well, wait a minute, because 2 years after that is when the Abraham Accords were announced, and Jared Kushner really championed all of this. And
was Qatar a signatory to the Abraham Accords at that point, or not?
I don't know. I didn't get that far to really go down that road and understand it more, but I do know that it was something that is meant to try to get as many of the countries in the Middle East on board to help normalize those relationships with Israel.
Yeah, it was the big showpiece of Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump's, supposed realignment of the balance of power in the Middle East, where, they would now be able to have this unity between Israel, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain. Some people said Qatar, although it was unclear whether Qatar was going to be a part of that at the time, because they really had a different way of thinking in Qatar than those other countries. But, even before Trump was elected, there was a deal between the Saudis and the UAE and Israel to try and do this. One of the reasons they wanted to put Donald Trump in power was to try and come up with a deal that would allow this rebalancing of power. And so it's not surprising to see that Jeffrey Epstein, who, many people, I certainly believe, worked for the Israeli military intelligence, was anxious to try and get Qatar on board. And it is interesting as well that Jared Kushner, who's got very close ties to the Israelis, including Benjamin Netanyahu, sleeping in his childhood bed, not with him, and that's obviously not with him, but,
No, but anytime he was there, they he'd sleep in his childhood. But yeah, it's
really weird story. Yeah. I mean, Bibi Netanyahu was the ambassador to the United Nations at the time, and also later as, for him to be staying over at the Kushners is one thing, to be staying over in Jared Kushner's bedroom is a little weird. Nevertheless, there that's how close they are. That's how close Kushner is to Bibi. And Jeffrey Epstein is pretty close to the Israelis. We've seen it through the Ehud Barak emails. So it's not surprising to see this email here.
And from what I understand, Jared Kushner's affinity partners, the mission statement, and I don't quote me on exactly this, but from what I remember, the mission statement is something to the effect of creating like an investment channel or some kind of investment relationship between Saudi Arabia and Israel. That's like the mission statement of it.
Well, that's interesting. I hadn't heard that before, but that makes sense. It's Affinity Partners, and they had $6 billion in assets under management now. Well, that's grown a lot, eh? Compared to the 4.8 billion in 2024. So they really have been growing a lot in this period of time.
Oh, yes. So about that. So that's kind of where it starts to tie into today. So what I had learned is with the Strait of Hormuz closed and the oil unavailable to us or, whoever else, we have less options. And one of our options is the Saudis. We can purchase from them and they have oil. But from what I understand, it is essentially twice the cost per barrel. So the Saudis seem to be directly benefiting in that way and making more money because we have no option but to purchase. Other people, I'm sure that's the case as well. And then they can continue to fund Jared. So like
explain that to me. Do you think that the war is actually raising the price of oil, which we've covered a lot on Narativ, and you think that's making the Saudis a lot of money which
From
is
what I understand, yeah. So like I said, this is very layman's understanding of it all. I know that this is a very complex market and there's a lot that's
but I think
involved with it.
what you're saying is correct. Yeah.
Yes, but from what I understand that they're, like I forgot, it was like 10 or 20% of our oil comes through the Strait of Hormuz or something like that. And so obviously with that unavailable, Saudi Arabia is one of the other places that we can access for energy. And part of that is oil. And from what I understand, the cost of their barrels is like double what we would normally be paying. And so I'm sure that we're normally getting oil there and we're probably already paying that, but not all of it, so we're purchasing a significant amount more. I'm sure we are or will be, or others are and will be. So with this closed, they appear to be earning a lot more money. It's very beneficial for them all the way around.
All the oil countries are really, so happy about this because whether it's Russia or Saudi Arabia or the UAE, they're all making a lot of money. Now, in the UAE's case and in Saudi Arabia's case, things are a little difficult right now because tourism is way down.
Mm-hmm.
The UAE is even asking for a bailout from the United States because no one's visiting Saudi Arabia now because of the war. And it looks like they'll be the targets of future attacks from the Iranians now that the Iranians have been able to rearm. So it'll be interesting to see if that dynamic changes. But the bottom line here is really what you're saying is Jared Kushner is compromised in many, many, many ways.
Yes.
And not only is he compromised because he is the son-in-law of the president, which is bad enough. And not only did he walk out of the White House having earned millions of dollars just by grifting of being the son-in-law of the White House, he left the first administration swearing he would not go back into politics and then going back into the venture firms and, getting all this $2 billion now, $6 billion from the Saudis in order to continue his private sector businesses. But that's fine. But then he decides to come back into the peace process as a peace envoy, and he's tried to negotiate peace now on two levels, both unsuccessfully. And it's, it just is so smelly because he is so corrupted.
Unsuccessfully. I mean, do we know if he's even really trying? Because,
he might not be.
Exactly. And it's very, I think that's ultimately at the end of the day, the point is regardless of whether he is benefiting, is not, the fact that there's a potential for it at all, he shouldn't be the one there. He shouldn't be involved in this in any capacity whatsoever. And I was talking to Waj earlier today, and he had reminded me about the Tulsi Gabbard situation in February and how she had been presented with some kind of complaint that was meant to be investigated. And she took it to Trump and his administration instead. And this person had gone to the Wall Street Journal, and it essentially was that something had been intercepted, a conversation of somebody that was very close to Trump. And I believe Waj had said that it was related to Iran. And it did come out that person was Jared Kushner. That had
was
been
sort of an open secret that it was Jared Kushner. Yeah.
And so, but that kind of fell by the wayside in all of the chaos of our world right now. But it's all roads lead back to this. Clearly this is a deeply corrupt situation that is impacting the whole world. And the fact that we have a Congress that is continuing to let it happen, there's just no forgiveness for that.
Well, you're absolutely right that, Jared is not just compromised by the Saudis, he's compromised by the Russians. He's got a history of being involved with the Russians in terms of money. He's got a history of being paid for by the Israelis. So you've got a long history there of really, profiteering from a bunch of countries that are opposed to America's national interests. And now here you have this incremental thing that's going on with the war that's making it really hard for America to maintain its position in the world, because we've now alienated all our countries that we're traditionally allied with, and are partnering with countries that are or look like we're partnering with countries that are traditionally opposed to our national security interests. And Jared Kushner seems to be the reason that that's happening, because
Yep.
he is, who is he really representing? The Iranians didn't even
It's
want to
not
talk to him
us.
in Pakistan because they're like, he's representing Israel. Why should we have the guy representing Israel here, to discuss these? So they asked for a change of negotiators.
And if the plans that Epstein drew up are actually what they're planning to do, I mean, they're essentially planning to remove the Western banking system from a lot of the world and trying to kind of be that new power that the United States have been for many years. And so it's very, very important that our officials are paying attention and not just playing the games, because that's, for me, is like the biggest annoyance with all of our politicians, and is all of the social media posts that they make. And it's like, I get that they can't go in and actually dismantle things themselves, but hey, maybe respond to a post. Don't go on social media and then literally never respond to anybody and just talk at us. It's like, we are aware.
They are probably, in fairness, I think Congressman Raskin, and I was trying to find this while we were talking here, because I have it somewhere in my files, but I can't pull it up. I'm going to keep trying to look for it because I know it's in some way. On the 16th, Raskin did put out a letter to Jared, asking some very pointed questions about his connections to the Saudis and demanding some answers. Now, I don't know if he has got an answer to that, and I don't know if it's realistic to even expect him to get an answer. But at least Raskin is asking the questions,
100%.
And the Democrats are at least asking the questions about Kushner's, very, very profitable.
They did open
deals.
an investigation. I know that much. Like, they've posted about having an investigation opened into Jared Kushner as it relates to all of those things, related to the EA Sports deal, all of that stuff. And it's just, I don't know that anything I've written directly made that happen, but it's really validating to see it all line up, to see that everything that I've written is like, yes, this is they have questions. So,
I mean, it certainly could be a part of what you're doing, and everyone's collective involvement here, I think, is so important, because the stories you're writing about Jared and the Saudis are important questions that if people aren't focused on them, others are not going to bring it up in Congress. And I think the New York Times has also done some interesting reporting, but generally speaking, there's been very little reporting. I saw a study earlier on today. Maybe I can pull this up.
I saw that too. Yeah, how the suppression of Jared Kushner in the news, and like how it is not being talked about. It's like a stat itself. Yeah, because I have been writing about this for, I don't know, over a month now, specifically like Jared and what is going on. And so it's been nice to finally see more about this, because I mean, I'm definitely not the first person to like put this together all the way as far as he's concerned. Maybe the way I've done it here in my article, but like, people know that he's corrupt. It's yes, exactly. This graphic, like, how is the general population going to be aware of these facts if nobody is talking about them?
I mean, it really is interesting here, because according to Popular Information, only 5 of the New York Times articles, and those are the famous 5 that we really helped highlight the story around how MBS was encouraging the Iran war conflict and about Kushner's involvement. And that's only 5 of the articles in the New York Times even mentioned his Saudi conflict of interest, compared to 48 other articles that mentioned Jared Kushner in general, which didn't mention his conflict of interest. And that goes down the line. Washington Post only had 1 article like that. And as you go down the mainstream press there, no one is mentioning Jared Kushner's conflict of interest with the Saudis as he's negotiating the peace deal around Iran, and as he's negotiating other peace deals around the world. This is not just suppression. This is a failure of duty, and this is the mainstream media failing to report on the basic facts of the story. Yes. This is not one of those things you can just ignore in a story. It's one of those things that should be high up.
Literally the core of it.
Yeah, exactly. So what are you hoping is, or what do you think is the next layer of this is going to be? Because we've got Raskin obviously in an investigative mode, and that's good to see that they're engaged that way. But he's not going to step away from the ring of power as long as his father-in-law is there.
Yeah, I think that the only way that we get anything done is midterms. We unfortunately, I think, have to do this the way that our country was set up for us to do this. We just have to hope that it's not, they haven't manipulated everything to a point where we can't do that. But I think the only way is for either Congress to get the president out so we can get a DOJ that will do their job and allow allow Congress to do their job. I mean, Congress can only see and act on the things that they're being given. And I know a lot of things that they should have access to, they don't. And so Todd Blanche is a nightmare. Yeah, it's great that Pam Pondi's gone. Throw her in
Not
prison.
really. I mean, she was at least a little bit more, she was at least a little bit more independent than Blanche is. I don't think Blanche is going to give us any independence at all.
I think her ego was her. So this is why, in my opinion, this is part of what makes Trump the ultimate puppet, is that he is the definition of a narcissist, and people who are smart and intelligent, they know how to manipulate that. And I think Pam Bondi was very easy to manipulate in that same way. I don't think Todd Blanche is. I think that he is just more of a snake. And so I think that it's a little bit more dangerous. I mean, he's the one, as far as I remember, he's the one that met with Ghislaine Maxwell to basically get her to say, Trump never did anything wrong. I never saw him do anything. Oh, wow. Now she's in a lower security prison. And so there's just lots of things that are so bad there. So I don't really see a lot happening. I'm honestly, I mean, the only thing I can really hope is that some of our allies, some of the other countries that know what's going on will start to do, because it's not just our country, there's others involved. So I know that this has to come out more at some point, but I don't know that it will be in the United States, at least before midterms.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine which countries are going to be the ones who are going to be, pushing raising their hand to be the ones to do this. It's such a unpopular thing to do from a number of perspectives. But here is the letter from Raskin. I was able to pull this up here. Let me just find a way to do this so you can see it as clearly as possible. And what he is saying, this is dated April 16th, 2026. And it's to Jared, and he's saying, in commas, special envoy for peace, because that is a weird title for anybody in the U.S. government.
Yeah.
You're now reportedly participating as special envoy for peace in negotiations on behalf of the United States government to address the rolling conflicts in the Middle East. At the same time, you are soliciting billions of dollars from Gulf monarchies for your private business ventures, while already managing billions of dollars of their money in your international investment firm, AFIN Management LLC, Affinity. From the standpoint of the American people, your decision to act in these two roles, one public for the government and one private for personal profit, creates a glaring and incurable conflict of interest. Your clients, Saudi Arabia and the Royal Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, have unique and significant strategic, economic, and political interests that are certain to diverge sharply from the strategic, economic, and political interests of the American people. When you approach negotiations related to the catastrophic Iran war, the prospect of a prolonged military conflict there, the rights of women and religious minorities in the Middle East, or the closure of the Straits of Hormuz, are you representing 100% the interests of your business partners in Saudi Arabia and other Gulf autocracies, or are you representing 100% the interests of the American people? Or is it a 50-50 split that you apportion in your loyalties between your official and corporate clients? Your clients, Saudi Arabia, wants to see a continuation and escalation of President Trump's Iran war. But the American people have an interest in minimizing the loss of American lives and treasure in the conflict. To whom do professional obligations and fiduciary duties belong? And that is a very sharp way of asking the question, because we are seeing now a continuation of that war. It doesn't look like anyone wants to stand down. It looks to me like the Saudis have been in Donald Trump's ear all along saying, keep going, keep going. And if all that's the case, and Jared Kushner supposedly an envoy for peace, but really pushing for war, there's not going to be an easy outcome for this quagmire that America stepped into.
Yeah, I don't see how this ends. I feel like that's where it comes back to what I was saying about Trump being a narcissist. When you have people that understand that about him, you just have to say, well, they're making you look dumb. They're making you look stupid. You don't want that. Like it literally nothing else matters to the man. Nothing else. So it doesn't matter what kind of logic is involved in making these decisions. Someone who has a severe narcissistic personality like him, when you know how to press his buttons, he's going to do whatever you need him to do, because as long as you make him think it's his idea, he's going to do it. And so this is how they manipulate him.
How do you know that? How do you know this? How do you know this about narcissistic personalities?
I have a lot of experience. No, it's just like the psychology of it, and I do have like experience with it just in people around me, but I've learned in my adult life that I am a very neurodivergent person, so a lot of these things I have learned to pick up on in other people throughout my life, but I'm just now putting names to all these things. And so I just I watch Trump post on his Truth Social, which I can't even say the word Truth Social. It's just so funny to me. And listening to what he's writing, I'm like, it's so obvious to me what he's being fed to get him to react this way. And what better for the Russians or anybody who wants the downfall of, our civilization than to completely continue to deplete us and make us hate each other. And it's all working just as planned.
And all you need really is one narcissist in the center of it all, and then surround him with people who are just feeding him really tainted knowledge. I mean, that's essentially what's going on. He's being fed lies. Whoever told him that this was a winnable war in a short amount of time was lying to him. Whoever told him that was a good idea to send these naval vessels into the Straits to do a blockade was lying to him, because anyone who was paying attention before knew that this was a kill box situation, and sending troops in there is just not the right solution, even if you believe they won,
And he had, I remember the other day, he was ranting about how we'd won this war, and that we'd completely destroyed their navy and all these things. Yet, how are they closing the Strait of Hormuz if we've destroyed everything? Like there's just no logic in the things that he says. And as the president of the United States, there is no excuse for that. I don't care. Whatever excuse is about to come out of somebody's mouth no, there's no excuse. You are the president. It is very much your job to go through all of this and make sure that this is in fact what's happening and the best, situation for us. And that's obviously not even close to what has ever been done by that man.
It's so interesting. Your analysis there is just really striking a chord. I have some questions for you about how you got started in all of this. And before we do that, let's just see if there's any questions here. People can ask us on YouTube, they're watching the messages and elsewhere. Let me just pull this up here. Where's my chat room gone? If you've got any questions to ask Kait or me, now's a good time to ask us. I need to have Malcolm Nance back. You're right. I do need to get Malcolm Nance back, because he was the one who introduced me to this kill box idea, and we really are seeing that maybe coming to light here. Dr. Bandy Lee has been warning about how dangerous he is. Indeed, Bandy Lee has been talking about his personality more as a sociopath than a psychopath than a narcissist, although it might have some psychopathic.
There's probably some tendency. Overlap there. Yeah.
It's not surprising. Let's see what else it says here in these questions. Let's see what else people are asking here on YouTube quickly. Jared, Jared learned the family business from his felon father. I mean, that is true.
It's not wrong. Not wrong there. Yeah. Because I didn't get to dive into his father as much, but I believe his father is also some kind of special something or other and has some position. Yeah. And they had actually prevented him from some kind of clearance or something. I can't remember exactly what happened, but they didn't want him to do his job because they didn't trust him at
The
one
French
point.
won't speak to him. Yeah, the French won't.
Yeah.
He's the ambassador to France, but they won't speak to him because
Yeah.
he's got this criminal past. He was in jail for a long time, and he got into jail, I think, because I don't know, one of either he or his brother blackmailed each other with a prostitute or some scandalous story that happened in New Jersey way back when. Someone's calling it the Strait of Vermouth, which is what Scott Bessent said the other day in a hilarious misstatement.
I had made a joke about the next cabinet meeting was just going to be a screening of Pulp Fiction, and they were going to serve Vermouth.
It's so, like, you've got the labor secretary who's going out to strip clubs and drinking with her team, and who's having an affair with his secretary or security team, and then Kash Patel is so drunk that he can't be woken up to go to work. You've got Scott Bessent saying the Strait of Vermouth, thinking about something completely different.
Clearly,
and it's just and this chief of staff called the president of the United States a alcoholics personality.
Yes, I bought that hard copy of that magazine. That was in the Vanity Fair article.
Yeah. Someone's pointing out here that Christie was the one who put Charles Kushner in jail, which is interesting. Of course, it's one of the reasons Chris Christie is not in the cabinet, has not been in the cabinet, because there's that kind of resentment between the Kushner team and the Christie family that still lingers today. But these are all very difficult personalities, whether it's Chris Christie or Kushner or Trump. These are all, compromised to the highest degree. Let me answer you. You started recently to write about this. Before this, you were writing as well. Tell us a little bit about what you were writing about before.
So before this, I was a marketing professional. I had been laid off. And so I was in the process of still trying to find a new job. And I had, the name Kait Justice really came because my husband would joke with me because I'm very active in like our school district. And then I'll get into it more, but it's called a Superfund site is something that I live in. And that has to do with just living in a toxic landfill essentially, but there's many of them across the country, and so I was just very active in EPA meetings, and so he said, look at you go, Kait Justice. Just kind of joking with me, and that's kind of where it came from. And so
I started K-A-I-T.
Yeah, my name's Caitlin, but a lot of people call me Kait, and my grandmother always used to spell it K-A-I-T. She was the only one, and so that's how I spell it. And so I started making videos about Superfund sites because I had gone to meetings and all these things and tried to do things through the proper channels, if you will, and sending letters. And I got nowhere. Nobody would respond to me properly. I got no information and no help. So I was like, all right, well, to the internet I go. And so I had gone viral a couple times with that. And I had been advocating, and basically what it is throughout the country, we have thousands of Superfund and brownfield sites. And what they are is they're places that have been contaminated so badly that the government had to step in to oversee the cleanup of them. And they're usually contaminated from, old nuclear stuff, forever chemicals. Where I live, it's General Electric had just completely polluted with PCBs where their transformer factories were, just dumped it right into the Housatonic River. So it is like so polluted all the way down to like the Long Island Sound from where I am in Western Massachusetts. And at first I was like, well, we're going to clean this up. And yeah, we're not, that's a whole thing. So I kind of shifted to, well, why don't our doctors know about this stuff? Why aren't people being properly screened for the things that all of this causes? And the answer is that it's liability, because once they admit that these are things that can happen from these things, those companies become liable. And the EPA and those companies do not want that. So I had just been writing about a lot of this stuff. And when the Epstein files had come out, I found it, I think it was the Donald Barr book, which he was Bill Barr's father.
Strange book that is. Eh?
So odd. And I won't go into too much detail with it, but Donald Barr essentially was the headmaster at Dalton School, where Epstein was hired with no real credentials. So there's a long story there. But he had written this really weird sci-fi book called Space Relations. And essentially it is about these planets, and one of these planets exists kind of outside of government reach. So they traffic people and children to this planet for all the things that Epstein did. Literally, it maps out so much to, like, literally everything that I have researched. Sure. It's so odd. So I'm like, there's no way that really exists. And it sure did.
It's a strange book. It's a strange book. When I first saw it, I was like, okay, this is really weird. And
it's
this guy
weird.
was a spy, right? He worked for the OSS before he was a headmaster at
because
the
I
Dalton
wrote
School.
Extensively about the Barr family fairly recently, too, a couple of weeks ago. And Donald Barr was part of the OSS, which came before the CIA. And in the 70s, I believe it was, there was something called the Church Committee. A gentleman named Frank Church was allowed to investigate the CIA and the NSA and the FBI and all of that. And they learned that they were doing some really shady stuff, spying on Americans, recruiting through the schools, all these things. So in my article that I wrote recently, I had gone through that a little bit. And I think, in my opinion, it seems like his son, Bill Barr, has spent his entire career trying to continue what his father has done, cover up what was not exposed. And it's wild.
I can tell you a little bit about Bill Barr from my research. What you're pointing to is exactly the sort of the rupture in the intelligence world, because after Watergate, everything was investigated. Everyone was trying to figure out how could this happen. And the Church Commission was one of the commissioners. There was another one, his name escapes me right now. But it was those two commissions that ultimately stopped the CIA from doing black ops operations around the world. These were operations that were sort of below the line operations that were funded outside of the traditional budget and involved any number of different covert kind of things, and kidnappings, assassinations, you name it, and also spying on Americans, amongst other things. And it's interesting that Bill Barr at the time was working in the Congress, being the liaison for the CIA.
Yep.
Who's the head of the CIA at the time was George Bush, and so that is clear enough and is an indication. And there's other reporting, and I've shown this in some of my stories, that Bill Barr also worked for the CIA prior to his other public life, and which means he's probably always been a CIA person.
Yes.
And I guess one of the most interesting things that I can share with you that maybe you don't know about Bill Barr is that when Donald Trump was looking for an attorney general who could really help him out of the Mueller bind that was coming his way, Bill Barr was the obvious choice. But it was the Israelis in Israel who first had the meeting with Bill Barr to ask him if he'll do this. It was the American ambassador in Israel. I know it's a rarefied, that little piece of information, but it's true. And
checks out.
It checked out for me. And I absolutely was kind of surprised to hear that. And he is well known as the cover-up general. That was his nickname, because he covered up Iran-Contra. Yes. He covered up the Promise affair. He covered up the Mueller's investigation, of course. And he's covered up Epstein very effectively. So if there's one person through the last 50 years of history who has been doing a lot of covering up of American and our entanglements with other foreign intelligence services, it's definitely Bill Barr. So you're good to focus on him. I think it's a smart thing in terms of Epstein. What are you going to do next? Do you have any next plans? What's up after Jared?
So actually, the next thing so I have a couple things that I'm looking into. One is his death. People keep asking me all the time, like, is he dead? Is he not dead? And honestly, that question is totally valid now, especially with the whole Bill Barr thing, because I'm like, I don't know if he was killed or extracted at this point. And it's like, something happened, like, and I don't know what it is. So I've gone through and just started trying to find information around his death, because one thing had come up, for example, I keep hearing people talking about how, I don't know if it was Virginia had mentioned it in something, maybe it was her book or something, but that he didn't have a prostate or something. And like, this keeps coming up, like, oh, Epstein didn't have a prostate. But then when they did the autopsy, he did. Well, I went back through and I found one of his CAT scan reports from 2016. And in 2016, he did in fact have a prostate. So, so it's like those kinds of things. So like, I'm just trying to see what makes sense. But the other component of this is, especially as it pertains to Jared, is the next logical step in everything that I've uncovered in my mind is the Rothschild family. Because I've written about Lynn Forrester Rothschild, and she is like a central node to this, and her name does not show up anywhere in those Epstein files. That's how you know she's important, because
Lynn
she's missing.
Rothschild does not show up. She does show up. I've seen her.
There might be a few mentions, but like not anything that I would expect her to show up for. So there might be some stuff, but I did not find what I would expect to find given the relationship. And I think some of that might be just the time frame of their relationship, and when they had their most communications. But I was so surprised that there was not more, even like searching the name Lynn. I'm like, you'll get a bunch of stuff, but it's not nothing like
stuff necessarily. It's not her direct connections to them.
Yeah, there was like nothing that I would have expected. Not even just like, because like with Kathy Rumler, is that how you say her name?
Yeah.
She like I would have expected things like that, right? Like even just like, hey, are you available? Or hey, just like that, those kinds of communicate. I didn't see anything. And
she's an interesting target. I think Linda Rothschild is really interesting. I've written a lot about the Rothschilds recently, and about their interesting genealogy and ties historically to the Epstein family, which I'm yet to publish that piece of it. But there's a theory out there.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I know what you're going to ask, but ask it. Ask.
I was just going to ask if you had found something called Project Iceberg, because this is something that I have found as it pertains to the Rothschild family and Epstein.
I've not heard of it. Maybe I have heard of it, but it sounds vaguely familiar. But I don't think so. But it does not like jumping out at me. Why? What is it? Do you know what it is?
I don't yet entirely. That's what I was kind of investigating now. But it was something that Epstein was working on with Ariane. Is that her name?
Yeah, Ariane. Yeah.
She was trying to. They were trying to restructure the Rothschild businesses that like who. And it had something to do with the name, like who can use which name for what, because there's different
This is the battle
offices
with her father or her brother. Sorry,
her brother-in-law or something like that. And so like there's things that involved that, but then she talked about leaving her husband at one point. So I'm like, I'm not entirely sure what it was he was doing there, but the reason why they come up for me is just the whole concept of Israel in general. I mean, like that family is deeply tied to why Israel exists to begin with. And so when you look at Jared and all he's doing, and this idea that they're trying to, I don't know what they're doing exactly, but they're doing something. And if it's, building up this new world order, if you will, it makes sense that family, the banking family that wanted this to expand and grow from the beginning, would be involved in some way. So I'm like, I need to kind of scratch that itch, if you will, and just
it's a really important node, because absolutely the Rothschild family was there, the establishment of Israel, but there is a group of sort of very right-wing Israelis who still believe that is only a portion of the country, and that there is a much broader, what they call Greater Israel, that they want to establish. And it certainly seems to me like the Rothschilds
Palestine is very much in that Greater Israel picture. So yeah,
and so is parts of Jordan, and it goes all the way into Jordan. It goes all the way almost to the Turks, and and would have swallowed up the parts of Lebanon, which they're now doing as they're invading Lebanon. So it's true that there is an expansionist sort of thing that's going on in Israel, and Israel is a big part of why Donald Trump became president in 2016. There's no doubt about it. There was an alliance of countries: Russia, Israel, the Saudis, the UAE, and some other countries. I believe China is involved in a peripheral way, sort of in a proxy way, and other countries that really work towards making sure that Donald Trump won those elections in 2016.
I agree.
And we've seen it since. We've seen them, get paid back. The Iranians, the Saudis got the first visit by the U.S. president in 2016 was to their country. That is an indicator of who the biggest sponsor is. And then you see the great gifts that they've been getting from the U.S. Trump administrations in terms of weapons deals that were previously denied to them. All these incredible deals they're getting around crypto in terms of the UAE and Qatar as well there. And Israel's getting a lot. Israel's got its embassy moved to Jerusalem from Tel Aviv. It's got these Bahrain agreements, and it's also had this unequivocal support for this war against the Iranians. That is not normal sort of flow for American foreign policy. That is highly influenced foreign policy. And when you look at someone like Jeffrey Epstein, who was an Israeli asset, some say agent, Ghislaine Maxwell, the same thing, operating like their father did for other agencies in the world, like for KGB and MI6 as well. But the idea that, this very powerful operation was happening around Jeffrey Epstein, involving the Rothschilds, involving all these significant names that we've learned in the last few months. Boy, it looks like something really big had happened. To me, this is you can't really disconnect Donald Trump from Jeffrey Epstein. They are the same network. And that's why they're so nervous about any investigations coming out. And that's why they have such a thorough cover-up going on right now of the Epstein files. That's why I'm focused on it. I'm sure that's why you're focused on it, is because there is a cover-up underway right now. It's a major crime, an obstruction of justice.
It's affecting the entire world, like the whole world, in like the deepest level. And once I've kind of put it all together like this, it's insane to be just a citizen who put this together. And we have officials who have let this happen over decades, who are trained to recognize this kind of stuff. And there's no way to look at this other than that. Like there's just no other logic behind why these events would all occur in these specific ways. And I agree with you about China and Russia. I think they mutually benefit from the downfall of America. So anything they can do to help, and so it doesn't necessarily mean that they're all best friends, but they have a mutual goal, and they have for a long time. Yeah. And I really personally feel like Donald Trump just wants to be an oligarch, and he's going to bleed us for everything he possibly can get. And hopefully the country falls apart and he has all of his funds, because they don't need American money when they have, everything over in their banks in Russia and they
crypto.
Have the Saudis. Yeah, that's
literally what their goal is. The goal is to get everything into crypto, to get Americans' dollars to collapse. So everyone in America loses their shirt, as they've been doing this over the years, and then ultimately, to be able to walk away with cryptos. And that's how he's now worth $10 billion in crypto. While we were talking, because you mentioned the Rothschilds, I pulled up my super graph, which hopefully I can pull up if it's, where is it? It is.
Oh, that thing is so cool.
It is cool, but often at times it's actually a real tool for me these days, because I need it to figure. I just can't find where I put it on my desktop.
I know, I do the same all the time.
It's so much open. Because I wanted to see about Linda Rothschild. I haven't, I've done some of the names here, but I haven't been able to do all of these. But this is the super chart, and I have a special button somewhere here, the Rothschild, which sort of identifies where the Rothschilds are around Jeffrey Epstein and who they are. And I know Lynn is in here. This Sir Evelyn de Rothschild and Lynn Forrest Rothschild is here on this. I don't know if it's showing up. There it is. There it is. Here. So she's in there. The Rothschilds, by the way, rank 5 in my node charts, which it puts, or six, sorry, very high up, the top five right now. Epstein has the most connections, then Trump, then the Rothschild dynasty is actually third in this case.
And there was an email where I think it was Epstein. I forgot who he was talking to. It might have been one of the Rothschild families, but he was talking about how Trump loves the Rothschild name. And, you know, like he was very, very proud to be associated.
Well, don't forget, he was bailed out in the bad 90s. It was the Rothschild company that bailed Donald Trump out of his financial crisis and saved his casinos and kept him in charge. Wilbur Ross was the guy.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, you see, there's
that makes sense, though. That's got my wheels turning now.
And that's why Wilbur Ross landed
something else.
Yeah, because it goes to the Bank of Cyprus. Wilbur Ross ended up being the Commerce Secretary. There's a whole lot of corruption that just flows all the way through that.
Yes, it does.
So, you know, and the Russians are a big part of this, of course, as we know. So I love playing around with this because it's like
it's so cool. Yeah, it really is so cool.
It's and it reorganizes itself in its own ways. I mean, sometimes you got to love AI. I mean, for doing the most incredible things. But anyhow, do you want to see anything else? Any other names I should pull up here while we're here? And anything else you want to see?
No, I don't know that I can think of something now. Now I'm thinking about the casino stuff because I have been looking into Trump and that time frame a little bit anyway, and I didn't realize that. So now I have another.
Yeah, I'd love to know more about that deal because he was representing all the bondholders, and you know Donald Trump should never have survived that bankruptcy in a million years.
He should not have.
But somehow he retained it, and it was Wilbur Ross working for the Rothschilds, which means they bailed him out. Is how he got it, and maybe it was the time he made a deal with the devil. Who knows? He seemed to make many deals with many devils along the way, where he sold his soul. So maybe that's one of them.
He definitely did that. Absolutely. Yeah.
Kait, it's so nice to spend the hour with you. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah.
And tell everyone how they can find your Substack and how they can support you and whatever else you want to share with them.
Yeah, thank you so much. I had such a good time. I am on Substack at Downwind of Truth and just Kait Justice. And then I'm also on Threads a lot, just Kait Justice. And everything that I write is free. I don't paywall anything. So just subscribing is incredibly helpful. It just helps, you know, everything that I'm writing reach more people.
I heard you and Alyssa were having a bit of an exchange today online because of about subscriptions and non-paid and paywalled and non-paywalled accounts. You know, I paywall my stuff because I don't know how people survive without it.
And there's no shame in that. It's just for me, and personally, I started that way, and so I've just kind of built it up on that way. And the way that I survive is just the kindness of people who decide to pay anyway, and just kind of help support me and enable me to continue doing this. And, you know, I just kind of position it like if you're able to be a paid subscriber, it just helps keep it free for everybody else. And so far, that has been, you know, I'm a pretty humble person. We don't need a excessive amount. I just need to, you know, pay our bills. And so that's kind of how it works. And then I did make some free or pay what you can resources as well. I made like what I call the Citizen Investigator Toolkit. So you can find that on my Substack as well under Citizen Investigator Resources.
What's in there? What happens there?
And so there's two of them. There's it's an ebook essentially, and then the second one is kind of like a workbook with templates, but it's just kind of like a toolkit. So ideally, the goal is to help people feel empowered to investigate their own communities or the Epstein files or whatever it is that they're wanting to investigate, because I feel like the system that we have, you know, whether it's your local city council or whatever, it's all set up to make you feel too stupid to participate. Like you're not an expert and you shouldn't be here. And I am completely against that. And I hate that so much. So I made a toolkit that just kind of helps you figure out, if you see something that you have questions about, what do you even do with that information? How do you ask the right questions? Who do you ask? How do you organize those things? And so it just kind of helps you organize your thoughts so that if you are investigating something locally or come join us in the Epstein investigation, you can, you know, have somewhere to start and it's not so overwhelming.
Yeah, it's a terrific resource. What a great idea to share that with everybody, and it empowers so many people to take their own communities and their own leaders to task when they need to be. I got to tell you, Substack is an incredibly powerful community in terms of the people who support Kait, who support Alyssa, who support Ellie. Ellie Leonard will be on tomorrow to do a really fascinating hour about Michael Wolff. I think everyone should tune in tomorrow at 8 p.m.
Yes.
She has been digging deep, and it's going to be really interesting to see some of her findings. She's been sharing some of her emails that she's discovered along the way, and it is kind of stunning how this 10-year friendship between Michael Wolff and Jeffrey Epstein sustained itself when Michael Wolff knew exactly what Jeffrey Epstein was about.
He was very much a tool, and that's what Ellie had been pulling together, that it was not him just passively being this person writing a book who just happened to have all these interviews. It's like he was very aware of a lot more than he's admitting that he was aware of. And he was very active in a lot of that PR manipulation that went into his reputation management and all of those things. And that is a huge task. So to have someone like Michael Wolff in your back pocket is,
it's good for him, for Jeffrey Epstein, but also good for Donald Trump. And, it's one of those things when you look at this network, not to jump on an Ellie's show tomorrow, but there's that served both of Donald Trump's interest and Jeffrey Epstein's interest. And if you think about Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein being part of the same network, you got to wonder if Michael Wolff is really a part of that network, whether he knew it or not. He was certainly doing their bidding.
I think that Trump was just very unaware of how much of a pawn he is in many, many different plans. And I think Michael Wolff was aware of that. And I think that he got what he needed. And I think with Michael Wolff, what really just has left a bad taste in my mouth with him is the fact that he has all of these recordings and things that he just claims nobody wants to hear. And it's so weird to me. I've never met anybody in my life who wouldn't sit and listen to all of them.
Well, so because it's incriminating, in all likelihood. It's one of the reasons you wouldn't want people to listen to this.
Definitely check out Ellie tomorrow, because she has extensive information on everything that she's found and how it all goes together, and it's really interesting.
She's 10 years worth of emails, which is it's a lot of emails to go through. So Ellie will be on tomorrow. Maybe we'll try to get the whole group of everyone together later this week, if that's even possible. That'll be great, because I have some questions I'd love you each to answer. And then there's a surprise guest on Thursday, I think. So that's what's coming up this week on 5 Nights, 5 Secrets. Thank you, Kait Justice, for being here tonight. It's always great to see you, and great work on the Jared Saudi investigation.
Thank you.
Keep at it, because I think there's a lot more. And I also posted my 2017, this is how long I've been doing this, story about my first reporting about Jared and MBS and Jared and the Russians. And it includes that 666. It was before this. I think it was before 666 was even sold. So it gives you a good sense of how that story sort of percolated at the start.
I'll have to read that one. I don't think I read that one yet, but you have an amazing brain. Because I'll go and I'll start figuring things out, and then I'm like, oh, Zev figured this out. He's and I'll realize that I'm referencing this. Yes,
I was really early on in this, and maybe that was good and bad, because they certainly came after me in a big way, because I started revealing the stuff, and then I was sort of under attack for revealing the stuff. 6 years later, it's all proving that to be true. 10 years later, it's all proving to be true. So at least there's that vindication.
It's validating, you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Kait. It's great to see you.
Thank you.
Have a great night. And you at home, you have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow at 3 p.m. again for the 5 Stack with Dean Blundell. Until then, have a great night.
5 Nights, 5 Secrets. The truth they tried to bury. All this week at 8 p.m. on Narativ.